All right, high rollers, we've all seen that famous scene in the movie Rounders where Worm caught a hanger. Dealing from the bottom of the deck, we saw what happened. Worm and Mike McDermott tossed from the poker game, left with black eyes and bloody noses. If you're going to cheat at cards, you better not get caught, because it's a dangerous proposition, folks. Our guest today, who I'm guessing has performed a card trick or two in his time, is an award-winning writer, an associate professor at Mississippi State, and the author of a number of books, including Before He Finds Her, The 3-Day Affair, and now his latest, Bluff. Michael Kardos is our guest today. Michael, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being our high roller.
Oh, Derek, thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Hey, we're glad to have you. You saw the scene, right? Rounders, the private police officers game, Worm caught a hanger. I mean, it's classic stuff. Cheating can be a dangerous pastime, right?
Yeah, you don't want to get caught. You have to do it well. Absolutely. I mean, just in your setup there, you pinned the thing that got me so interested in writing about a card cheat in the first place, because I was thinking I knew I wanted to write about a magician. And I was thinking, but the thing that this magician cares so much about is like, yeah, if someone figures out how your trick is done, who cares? You know, like maybe they tell their friend that you were no good, but if you get caught cheating at poker, it's a whole different deal.
Man, it's high stakes indeed. Now, this book is after my own heart. I'm a fan of gambling history, the poker legends, casino lore, you know, about the sharps, the advantage players. If there's an edge, they'll find it. When I opened your book, Bluff, the first quote I see is one I'm very familiar with. The American proverb, trust everybody, but always cut the cards. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in that statement, isn't there? Life and cards.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I went down a rabbit hole even trying to figure out who to attribute that to. It's attributed to so many different people. That's why I ended up just saying American proverb. And then I traced it back to some British novel back from the 1800s, so it even goes back further than that.
Unbelievable. Okay, before we get into the plot, let's first differentiate between a magician and a card sharp. I'm impressed by both, I gotta say. Magicians and mechanics. These card mechanics, though, are sometimes stunning. I just watched a documentary called Dealt. Features a guy named Richard Turner who's blind, one of the best mechanics in the world. I mean, you don't want this guy, you don't want these guys at your home game, right?
No, I love that idea, and we were talking a little bit about that documentary, which I haven't seen, but I'm going to watch it tonight. The idea of a blind card sharp is so perfect because, among other things, it's going to make whoever he's playing with sort of let their guard down.
I'll tell you what, I highly recommend the documentary Dealt. Richard Turner is unbelievable, blind. He practices all day long. He's got a deck of cards in his hand all day long. All right, Bluff. The story focuses on a young woman, a magician, a prodigy. She finds herself delving into the seductive world of card cheating. Surely a temptation for anyone with this ability, right? But I find that people who are cheating are usually desperate. And this woman, Natalie, the character in your book, is desperate. She finds herself in a spot. I'd categorize the book as a high-stakes thriller.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think I wrote it to be a heist book disguised as a poker book disguised as a magician novel.
It's got all the things I like, man. I love those heist movies, so this is good.
Oh, yeah, me too. I always love in a book or a movie where you think you're reading one kind of book or you think you're watching one kind of story, and then all of a sudden you realize you've been watching it all wrong and it's really a different kind of story.
Well, the thing I like about these types of books and movies are the fact that it takes skill to pull it off, right? So they're the underdogs because if they get caught, there's a lot of trouble awaiting. But if they pull it off and you see the mastery that it takes, I mean, it's impressive.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think there's something about those kind of stories where we find ourselves rooting for the criminal, which is kind of a crazy thing. And, go into some detail in the book about how, on the one hand, a card sharp is no different from just a guy who breaks into your house and steals your stereo. I mean, they're both criminals, but there's something about the finesse and the elegance, and we know this the thousands of hours that must have gone into the, development of that skill, and I think that makes us root for them somehow.
It does take skill. I mean, you talk about this world and the lure there. It's kind of like any good poker game. There's high risk, high reward. The character Natalie obviously has skill, but it seems a long way off from winning a World of Magic competition to the seedy underworld of cheating.
Yeah, so she was a prodigy, as you said. When she was 18, she won this international sleight of hand contest, and that ended up being sort of the peak of her career. And when the story opens, she's 27, and she's doing bachelor parties and all sorts of crummy corporate gigs. And she has this opportunity to, what she thinks is going to be an opportunity to profile a professional card cheat for an article for a magazine because she's interested in, what a mechanic would do that's different from what she does or what's the same about it. But this professional card cheat she meets sort of lures her into this other world.
Yeah, and it's a scary world, isn't it?
It is, and that's one of the things that the magician was interested in, something that I was interested in, this idea that, if you're cheating at cards and you get caught, I think there's a line in the book that says, maybe a room of pacifists will let you off, but I've never seen a room of pacifists.
Now, the reviews in the book have been great. On Twitter, I see, and by the way, you are at Michael_Kardos. Your pinned tweet is a quote from the Chicago Tribune. In the tantalizing new thriller Bluff, Michael Kardos reveals himself to be a master at dealing from the middle of the deck. From where I sit, Michael, that's a huge compliment.
Thanks. Yeah, that was really exciting to get. I didn't realize until working on, this is my third novel, and I didn't really think too much about it, how much writing a novel is like doing a card trick or like doing a magic trick, or in a way like being a con artist. We're all trying to draw people into this world. And then, the whole thing about the con artist, right, is especially if you're doing the big con, is that you've got to not only lure people in, but let them go away and come back, right? That's the whole thing with the sting, right? What makes the big con is that Lonergan doesn't just get grifted, but he has to go away and then he has to trust the con artist so much that he'll come back with his own money, right? And in a way, that's like the end of chapter 1 of a novel, right? You pick up a novel, you read the first chapter. No one's making you read chapter 2. You can put it down and walk away. So to make them come back, you really got to develop this kind of trust quickly. And it was really fun to think about the book as a kind of magic trick in a way, or a kind of con.
Well, with any good magic trick, and one that really lures the audience in, it takes patience. It's all in the setup, right? And that's kind of like your book.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The setup has to be something that, seems like you've never seen before, and you've got to know what's going to happen. Although in a way, it's funny. Sometimes that what happens isn't even that important. If I were to blow up a balloon and start inflating it in front of you, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it's going to pop, right? But you can't turn away because you want to know how loud it's going to be and what the explosion is going to be like. And so in a way, sometimes even knowing what's going to happen isn't the point, but it's just the excitement of seeing it happen.
Now, you also tweeted this quote: Natalie's battle with her own conscience is the real suspense in the novel, and we're waiting for her to crack the same way we wait to see the final card revealed in a game of Texas Hold'em. I mean, that is the real suspense in poker. That river card, right? Cry me a river, or yes, I got it, right? That's the big suspense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we know any story about somebody who's thinking about moving over to the dark side, they're going to do it. Right? Otherwise, there's no story. Okay, so it's, what's the reason for it, and how seductive is that reason, and would we do it too? And, we sort of put ourselves in their ethical position and see what we might be tempted to do.
We see in the real world stories all the time about people getting caught cheating. Of course, their name is sullied. There's honor among thieves, right? You're not supposed to do it. But for all the people that are busted, you wonder about these aces that never get caught, the highly skilled magicians of the trade, if you will. What did you learn about the world of gambling in writing this book in your research about the lure of big money and those who are constantly looking for an edge?
Yeah, I think one thing, I think in a way, we don't know, it's like we don't know the best forgeries in an art museum because we haven't found them. We know that they're out there, and if you ask any museum director or curator, they'll say, oh yeah, I'm sure our museum has some forgeries, but I don't know which one. So in a way, the best cheats we don't know about because they stay under the radar. They don't get caught. So in a way, it was fun for me to think about the ones who are a little less than great, and what their tells are and who picks up on that. And the novel Bluff is kind of framed around two big poker games. There's one about a third of the way through that's lower stakes, and there's one at the end of the novel that's very high stakes. And the lower stakes one was really fun to write because there's a bad cheat there, and sort of detailing the ways in which he was screwing himself up was really a fun thing to think about and to write about.
Well, in that Twitter quote that you put out there about Natalie battling her own conscience, I mean, in a poker game, it's so great because the rules allow for bluffing. It's a mind game, right? Because you tell yourself, I think the right move here is to bluff, but what if I get caught? And you got to battle these demons in your head. Do you make the right move? But what if, right? There's all these what ifs.
Yeah, and I'm not a great poker player by any stretch. I play like any really, really, really amateur player does. But in talking to people who are a lot better than I am, I thought it was so interesting that so much of it to them at that level comes down to math and how, yeah, they bluff, but certain hands come out and they're like, it's certain cards are on the table. It's almost like an algorithm. The math comes first. And I thought that was really interesting too. This idea that in a way it was the worst players who were so concerned with bluffing hand after hand after hand.
Yeah, I think I just categorized myself. Well, when you look at these guys like the Phil Hellmuths and the Phil Ivies and the Daniel Negreanu's, they really are performing art, Antonio Esfandiari, one of the best of all time. His nickname is the Magician, right? I mean, these guys are pretty good, and for those forgeries that you mentioned that never get caught, they're pretty damn good themselves.
Oh, absolutely, and it's an amazing skill, I think, to pretend to be something or someone you're not so effectively that no one knows you're doing it is quite a skill.
Now, I understand you like to perform a card trick at your book signings. I see that you recently tweeted happy birthday as well to magician Fred Culpet, creator of the still used silk tag trick. You included a version being performed by Lance Burton. What is your relationship with magic? Does it go back a long way?
It does. When I was a kid, I was really into it. The first show I ever saw in New York was The Magic Show starring Doug Henning. I think that must have been the late 70s. And I was into it as a kid. My 8th grade English teacher started a magic club. And when I was in high school, I grew up on the Jersey Shore. And when I was in high school for a couple of summers, I did magic for my job on the boardwalk. And that was great practice. I did 8 shows a day,
wow,
5 days a week. And so that gets the sleight of hand pretty decent pretty quickly. Yeah, I stopped doing it after a while. But then, I was always interested in it. I had a pretty decent library at that point of magic books. And the craziest thing was when I went back to grad school for writing when I was 30 years old. And the first fiction class I ever taught, this undergrad in my class, was a magician, a professional. He was only about 20, but he's already touring the world, 30 countries a year and everything. And he'd email me and be like, oh, I can't make it to class because I'm going to be in Hong Kong, performing. And we stayed in touch over the years. He was by far the best sleight of hand magician I'd ever seen, blew everybody else out of the water. And we stayed in touch over the years. When I started working on this book, I asked him if he would sort of be my magic go-to. I figured it'd be easier to find poker experts to talk to and harder to find magic experts. And he said he would do it, provided that the magic was not real. You know what I mean? Like, it couldn't be supernatural, because he was so sick of watching every, story about magic ultimately become, oh, it's real. Even good ones like The Prestige, which I love. At a certain point, it's supernatural. And I had no intention of doing that because I was really interested in the craft. I was really interested in expertise in the craft and the idea of apprenticeship and all that. And so he was on board. So I had my magic expert. And so, yeah, I was always pretty interested in it.
I think from your own personal experience learning magic, you mentioned something off the top of the interview that it takes, thousands of hours in some cases. And you'll see it tonight when you watch the documentary called Dealt. I mean, it really takes time and effort. People say, hey, they get to the point where they see you say, pick a card, any card, but they don't see the thousands of hours that went into that trick.
That's right. And I think one thing that poker has in common in a way with magic, and I think being a poker cheat probably the most so, is that it's so interesting because all these thousands and thousands of hours no one ever sees. If you do it right, it's totally invisible. And that's just so interesting to me. So many things that we do, you see a great musician, you can see the fruit of their thousands of hours. But if you're cheating at cards, the whole point is that no one will ever see it. And that's just really, really fascinating to me.
What is your take on advantage play? I mean, we see the case of Phil Ivey in the courts nowadays on edge sorting. He spotted a defect in the cards and he used it to his advantage to the tune of millions. Is that advantage play or is it cheating? I mean, what's your thoughts on these things?
I always had a question about card counting too, right? I mean, this basic thing, like, my gosh, if you're just using your brain. So, I mean, my gut is, man, if you can pick up an edge and it's not your set and you didn't set it up, I mean, so many of the odds are stacked against you to begin with. My gosh, but I don't know. It's I don't know. What's your take on it?
I'm all for advantage play. If you spot an edge, I mean, you go for it. I mean, the casinos spot the edge on every table, so they're going for it. Right. They nickel and dime you on the parking, on everything, the downtown, rejuvenation taxes, everything they got going against you. So I don't think that you cheat outright. It's a really touchy subject, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It totally is.
But what is cheating and what isn't cheating? It's a good question.
Well, I think sometimes we know what cheating is, But yeah, if you spot a little advantage and don't tell anybody about it, I don't know.
I'll tell you what. 5 guys at one poker table ganging up on the other 3 guys. That's cheating. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Definite collusion I'm not into. But,
yeah.
If you spot a little defect in the cards and the casino's putting those cards out there, I say, why not? Go for it. Okay, lastly here, I see that on your bio, your Twitter bio, that you're pretty decent at ping pong. I mean, I know you're a former drummer. You've got some good hand-eye coordination. Ping pong is a game I love, man. A couple of friends and I have had some good battles over the years. I mean, that's a great game.
Oh, yeah. I grew up with a table in the basement, so I'm really good at the off-the-ceiling shot.
You got the ricochet going. We used to do the overhand serves like tennis and everything and get that ball curving. A fun game, ping pong.
That's not allowed. You can't do that.
Hey, we spotted an edge.
This interview's over.
All right, listen, Bluff, man. I got the book. Thank you very much for that. Grove Atlantic is the publisher. Tell us about how it's gone so far since the release.
It's been fun. I mean, it came out about a month ago, so I've just been doing a lot of bookstore events and, some university events, and I'm mainly in the South because I live in Mississippi, but I'm doing some New York, New Jersey, Delaware stuff coming up in a couple of weeks. So you can always, go to my website and see what's coming up. But it's been super fun. Writing a book is really solitary, so it's fun to kind of go out and meet people who are actually reading it.
Hey, listen, I got to ask you about that, too, because I've always had a fascination with writing a book, and I get the ideas. I've got ideas. I started off, I get a few paragraphs in, and I don't know if I'm a perfectionist or what, but it's hard, man. It's hard. And I saw on YouTube, you told a story about your mom and this project she put you on when you were 12 years old, a short story project. Can you tell us the importance of that and her influence?
Yeah, sure. So my mom was a high school English teacher, and just one summer, I think I was 12, it was just kind of a lark. We decided, the 4 of us, my dad, my mom, my sister, and I would write a story a week and then read them. And I thought it was really cool. So I wrote a story the first week, and so did everybody. And then over the next 2 or 3 weeks, everybody dropped out of that club except for me. So I kept it going pretty much for the summer. And I think it was something that one thing I've always liked was finishing stuff, even if it was terrible, and I like the idea of finishing a thing, especially a big thing. And a novel is a big thing. So I think it was something that I don't know if that exactly how it translated, but maybe it just gave me a sense that, you could actually finish something.
Well, you finished this book. It's called Bluff, written by Michael Kardos, a masterly exercise in narrative sleight of hand. This is suspense in its purest form. Prepare to be taken. That review from Megan Abbott. Michael Kardos at michaelkardos.com. Michael_Kardos on Twitter. Award-winning author. His new book, again, Bluff. Tantalizing thriller where the stakes increase each chapter. Michael, thanks for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Oh, Derek, I appreciate it too. Thank you.